Welcome back, everybody. This is the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Thomas, coming to you live from One Buffalo, New York. And obviously, if you have not checked the title, this podcast episode is once again brought to you by myself, and the subject matter is the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills winning a quote-unquote meaningless game versus the Cleveland Browns. I wouldn't necessarily say that it was a meaningless game, obviously due to, in large part, the fact that they are out of the playoff hunt now. Most teams, or most people, I should say, would say that this game was a meaningless victory. I don't think so. I do believe in moral victories. This would have been a downright disaster had the Buffalo Bills lost this game to the Cleveland Browns, the 0-13 Cleveland Browns, now 0-14. If they would have lost this game, as I alluded to in the previous Thomas Take podcast episode, hell would have been at one Bills drive. Rex Ryan probably would have been let go at that point. Obviously, the tension is reportedly brewing. I don't know what to believe. I don't know what not to believe. That the tension is brewing at one Bills drive and that Rex Ryan could be given his walking papers as the 2016 season comes to a close. That was a rumor that was leaked before the Pittsburgh Steelers game after the collapse that was in Oakland. And I don't know to believe it or not. I have not been hearing any inclination that Rex Ryan is going to get the boot from the Bills brass, from the Pagula family, and from the sources close to the Buffalo Bills organization that I have, they say that the ship will continue to march on, or the ship will continue to sail, I should say, with Rex Ryan as their head coach next season. That is one question that the Buffalo Bills have, among many others, but another question that a lot of Buffalo Bills fans have is whether they will keep Tyrod Taylor. Obviously, Tyrod did take a little bit of a back seat from last year to this year. He has regressed as far as a passer. And when you look at the rankings, Buffalo ranks first in the National Football League in rushing. They rank near last or dead last in the majority of the passing categories. Yards per attempt, yards per game, touchdown passes per week, per game, I could say. Really just across the board, passing-wise. They are not a passing team this season as opposed to, in comparison to last season. So I have been a harsh critic of Tyrod Taylor. Last year when the Bills decided to keep him, when they decided to start him, I had my reservations, but he proved me wrong in a sense that he was a week-in and week-out starter. He only did miss 2 games. The 2 games he did miss were crucial to the Bills missing the playoffs. It was more a question of durability. But, after last season, I did not have many questions about him as a passer. And this year, he has proven that he is not as good of a passer as, I had even thought he was. And I didn't think he was the greatest passer on earth, but I thought that he was better than what he has shown this year. And now the situation is the fact that the Buffalo Bills gave him this contract extension. If you go back to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast channel on YouTube, you would see my take on that deal, and it was Ryan Thomas is Burning. It was a pun on Jim Rome is Burning, obviously his old show back in the day. And I was really agitated with the fact that they gave him this contract. I didn't feel it was necessary. I felt like this was a rushed move that the Buffalo Bills made yet again, almost in comparison to the Ryan Fitzpatrick contract that was written, I believe, in 2011, where they gave him a 6-year, $62 million deal. And this contract is not a bad contract. It's not the contract itself that I couldn't stand. It's the fact that they gave him this contract when I feel he didn't necessarily deserve it. And that is the case, obviously, now, being that the Buffalo Bills will miss the playoffs for the 17th season in a row. And next year, there is an option attached to Tyrod Taylor's contract. So that option basically instills a $3 million bonus over the course of the next 5 years. Next year, he'd be making $12 million plus $3 million, $3.1 million as far as his option bonus, a $3.1 million option bonus for the next 5 years. It amounts to $27 million in total, but it's spread out in bits and pieces. So if they decide to keep him, they can get out of the contract at any point, which is a great fact within the contract. But do the Buffalo Bills move on? Do they try to move on to go to another quarterback? I think they should, for the reason that their passing attack has been very limited, and I don't know if it's something that can be fixed within Tyrod Taylor. I think that he does have serious physical limitations to his game, and his mechanics are, let's just say, not the most polished as a quarterback. But my case today, and it's basically going against the point that I've been trying to make for the better part of the last year, is why they should keep Tyrod Taylor. And when I first posted this status on Facebook, most people thought that that was pretty shocking that I would post why they should keep Tyrod Taylor, when everybody knows that the majority of my opinion, at the end of the day, includes the fact that they should move on. But today on the Thomas Take, I'm going to make a case as to why they should, why they should keep Tyrod Taylor. Going into this season, they gave him the contract. He went up against the Baltimore Ravens. They lost that game. Then against the New York Jets, they lost that game. Shortly after that point, at 0-2, the Buffalo Bills fired offensive coordinator Greg Roman, moving on from Greg Roman and going with Anthony Lynn at the offensive coordinator position, the offensive coach, offensive coordinator coaching position. And after that, we did see a little bit of an uptick as far as ability from Tyrod Taylor. We saw them use him the way that Greg Roman practically did last year. And in spades, we saw that. And I don't think that we have fully seen where Tyrod can really make his mark as a quarterback. They haven't used him necessarily in the right fashion that you would hope for them to. And when a quarterback is only asked to throw the ball 20 to 25 times a game, and the run game is that relied on, as it should be, they have a great running back, LaShawn McCoy. They have a great backup running back, Mike Gillislee. But you do have to open things up in the passing game. And this year, the Buffalo Bills could not do that. Reason why they could not do that is because Sammy Watkins missed the majority of this season. When Sammy Watkins was out, Robert Woods was dinged up. Marquise Goodwin is not a reliable wide receiver 3. And obviously, one dynamic of this whole situation that has been lost on some people is the fact that they let go of Chris Hogan, let him walk to sign a 3-year, $12 million deal with their division rival, the New England Patriots. And in opportunistic moments for the New England Patriots, Chris Hogan has very much so stepped up. The first touchdown pass of the game against Buffalo at New Era Field, the touchdown pass from Tom Brady to Chris Hogan. The play that propelled me into my fantasy football semifinals with Tom Brady's first play on the drive late in the game with 6 minutes left. Brady drops back, three-step drop, looks off the safety, and Chris Hogan just streaks down the field. Brady throws him a nice, dinking pass right over the safety, right over the top. Chris Hogan ran it for a 79-yard touchdown to ice the Ravens and practically win the Patriots the game. You could say that's more Tom Brady than Chris Hogan, but the fact is Chris Hogan was able to get on the same page with Tom Brady, and those are two cases, but there's been plenty more. He's had a solid season for the Patriots. He's actually been their deep threat on the New England Patriots this season. So, in a year where Sammy Watkins was hurt, and in a year where they let go of Chris Hogan, those were probably two of their best deep threats. Robert Woods isn't the fastest guy in the world to be a deep threat. Marquise Goodwin can't stay on the field long enough to remain consistent on the field. Justin Hunter was signed during the season. He showed spades of decent playmaking ability. But really, Tyrod Taylor has had little playmakers throughout this season. That is a case that could be made to keep Tyrod Taylor. Another case that could be made is the fact that there are no really legitimate day one, week one starting quarterbacks in this year's 2017 NFL Draft. I am high on Chad Kelly. I think Chad Kelly will be a 4th, maybe 3rd, maybe 5th round pick in this year's draft, due in large part to the fact that he tore his ACL and he has some character questions with the incidents that he had at Clemson that propelled him to be disqualified from playing, from eligibility pretty much to go force him into the junior collegiate ranks, to put him, basically for him to really reinstill in himself that he can make a difference on a team. Ole Miss gave him the opportunity. Had it not be for this ACL injury this season in his senior year on the Ole Miss team, he would be a 1st or 2nd round pick, maybe a 3rd, early 3rd at the latest. Now, due in large part to the ACL injury, he might not even make the scouting combine. He might not even make his pro day. So there'll be big question marks as to where he's at physically. And that will cause his draft stock to fall. Anytime a player has an ACL injury, usually that makes their draft stock fall a little bit. Case in point, Willis McGahee probably would have been a top 10 pick had he not tore his knee. Maybe even a top 5 pick had he not tore his knee. Another guy that comes to mind is the Hall of Famer Thurman Thomas. He had an ACL injury at Oklahoma State back in the day, caused his draft stock to fall all the way to the 2nd round. We're talking about a Hall of Fame caliber running back. So, Mitch Trubisky, I have questions about him, the North Carolina Tar Heel quarterback. Deshaun Kaiser, Notre Dame, I have some questions about him. Deshaun Watson, I have some questions about him. There's no real clear-cut guy in this year's draft. There's no Andrew Luck in this year's draft. And there isn't even really a Carson Wentz in this year's draft. The jury is still out on Jared Goff, but even in comparison to Jared Goff coming out of college, there's no Jared Goff coming out of college. There just isn't. Coming out of college, Jared Goff did have the moxie to his name that these guys don't necessarily have. So that's another case. What direction do the Buffalo Bills go in if they decide not to keep Tyrod Taylor? I have no idea. There are few and far between options as far as a guy that can make that week one immediate impact. Another guy that, free agency wise, Colin Kaepernick will be out there probably. Mike Glennon will be out there probably. Mike Glennon is a guy that I liked coming out of college that came out the same year that E.J. Manuel was drafted. I highly doubt that the Buffalo Bills will keep E.J. Manuel. I think this is his last year as a Buffalo Bill. Going down in history as probably one of the worst investments that the Buffalo Bills made, and in large part due to the fact that they really sabotaged his career, allowing him to be thrown right into the fire right away when he was not a quarterback prospect coming out of college that was supposed to be thrown into the. Mike Mayock made a very good point. He said that E.J. Manuel was a molded piece of clay. He needed to be molded right, and if he was molded right, he could be very good. And the Buffalo Bills did not do that. So it'll be very interesting. But that is my case to keep Tyrod Taylor. The fact that there aren't many options in the 2017 draft, the fact that we have not had legitimate playmakers throughout the entirety of this season stay healthy for Tyrod Taylor, and the fact that there might not be many options even in the free agency market to go after. And continuity does breed success. And changing quarterbacks, changing head coaches, changing offensive coordinators, changing defensive coordinators, that does not breed success. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.